What happened when a talk show host pushed Melania Trump too far? The answer shocked the world. The camera panned across a buzzing live audience in Los Angeles, capturing the excited faces of fans who had lined up for hours just to be part of this electrifying moment. The set was alive with energy, the bright lights reflecting off polished floors, creating an ambiance that promised both entertainment and controversy. This was primetime television at its peak, a show known for its biting political satire, its unfiltered questions, and, above all, its host's ability to keep viewers on the edge of their seats. Alex Brooks, the charismatic and razor-sharp host, sat comfortably in his chair, his polished smile illuminated by the studio lights. He was no stranger to controversy. Over the years, his reputation had been built on his fearless, often relentless questioning of his guests, especially those from the political world. He thrived on debate, on laughter, on the unpredictability of live television. Tonight was supposed to be like any other, until it wasn't. With an air of calculated suspense, Alex leaned forward slightly, his eyes twinkling with amusement as he addressed the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight, we have a guest who you'd never expect to see on this stage. Someone whose presence alone is enough to make headlines. The crowd murmured, curiosity rippling through the room like a low-voltage current. The show's fans were used to big names, but the way Alex teased this particular guest suggested something unexpected, something unprecedented. Then, as if orchestrated for maximum dramatic impact, the curtain at the edge of the stage parted. The silhouette of a tall, poised figure emerged. The murmurs in the audience grew louder. Gasps, whispers, a few surprised claps. And then, stepping gracefully into the light, Melania Trump appeared. She was dressed in an impeccably tailored ivory suit, her posture exuding confidence, her expression composed yet unreadable. The former First Lady carried an air of quiet strength, the kind that turned heads without demanding attention. The room hesitated between applause and disbelief. Some clapped tentatively, others sat frozen, exchanging looks of confusion. Melania Trump, here, on this stage, in this space that had often been less than kind to her and her family. Even Alex, known for his ability to anticipate and control every moment of his show, seemed momentarily thrown. He recovered quickly, his signature smirk reappearing as he gestured for her to take a seat. Melania did so with calm confidence, crossing her legs elegantly as she settled into the chair opposite him. She offered him a small nod, her voice smooth and deliberate as she spoke. "Thank you for having me," she said. The audience wasn't sure how to respond. Some shifted in their seats, intrigued but skeptical. Others were simply eager to see what would unfold. One thing was clear, the stage was set, but no one, not even Alex Brooks himself, could predict what was about to happen next. The interview began in typical fashion, with Alex maintaining his well-rehearsed charm. He leaned back, crossing one leg over the other, studying his guest with the curiosity of someone who had just been handed a puzzle they weren't quite sure how to solve. "So, Melania," he began smoothly, "it's been quite a journey for you since your time in the White House. What's life like now?" Melania met his gaze without hesitation. Her expression remained calm, unreadable. "Life is peaceful," she replied, her voice steady. "I focus on my family, my projects, and helping children through my initiatives." Alex nodded thoughtfully, but the glimmer of mischief in his eyes never faded. He wasn't known for offering easy conversations, and the audience knew it. This wasn't a space where guests could glide through with rehearsed answers. Yet, Melania's poised demeanor seemed to momentarily disarm him. She continued speaking, her tone measured, her words chosen carefully. She spoke about her post-White House efforts, her work with underprivileged children, her initiatives to promote mental health awareness, and her belief in using her platform for positive change. For a moment, the audience listened intently. Even Alex seemed intrigued, despite himself. But then, as expected, he shifted gears. "That all sounds wonderful," he said, his voice light but pointed. "But let's be honest. Your time in the White House wasn't exactly a fairy tale, was it?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop slightly. Melania didn't flinch. "No one's life is a fairy tale," she replied simply. The audience reacted, a mix of chuckles, murmurs, a few knowing nods. Alex pressed on. "Come on, Melania," he said, his smile widening. "You were in the middle of one of the most controversial presidencies in history. You must have some thoughts." A pause, just long enough to make the audience lean in. Melania folded her hands in her lap. "Every First Lady has challenges," she said smoothly. "It is a role of great responsibility. I chose to focus on the good I could do." Alex wasn't satisfied. He leaned forward slightly. "But surely there were moments when you wanted to push back, to say something, to, I don't know, break the silence?" Melania tilted her head slightly, as if considering the question. "Silence," she said, "is sometimes more powerful than words." The audience reacted again, this time more murmurs, a few whispers of agreement. Alex raised an eyebrow, clearly entertained by her ability to sidestep his bait with such precision. But he wasn't done. "All right," he said, switching tactics. "Let's talk about your image. There were times when people thought you were unhappy, even trapped. Did you ever feel stuck?" A sharper question, a direct hit, the kind that could unravel a guest if they weren't prepared. But Melania didn't waver. Instead, she did something unexpected. She laughed. A soft, knowing laugh that carried just enough weight to shift the energy in the room. "People like stories," she said, a small smile playing at her lips. "They create them when they do not know the truth." The audience erupted, half in amusement, half in surprise. Even Alex blinked, momentarily thrown by her response. He had expected defensiveness, maybe even irritation. Instead, she had flipped the narrative effortlessly, and for the first time that evening, it was clear. This wasn't going to be the interview he had planned. The conversation continued, winding through topics both personal and political. But every time Alex tried to corner her, Melania met him with calm deflection, with a quiet confidence that refused to be shaken. By the end of the segment, something had shifted. The audience could feel it. This wasn't just another guest being grilled by a sharp-tongued host. This was a moment where perception was being challenged, where expectations were being rewritten. And when the show finally cut to commercial, Alex Brooks exhaled, leaning back in his chair with something that almost resembled admiration. Because tonight, for the first time in a long time, he had met a guest who refused to be rattled. And that was something no one had expected. "Interesting," Alex said after a pause, his gaze fixed on her. "But let's be honest, many people have criticized you for remaining silent on controversial topics during your time as First Lady." How do you respond to that? The room seemed to hold its breath. The tension was almost tangible, coiling in the air like an invisible force. Every pair of eyes was locked on the stage, waiting, some with curiosity, others with judgment. This was the kind of moment Alex Brooks thrived on, the kind that made headlines. But across from him, Melania Trump remained unshaken. She sat poised, her hands resting gently on her lap, her expression unreadable. "I believe actions speak louder than words," she said simply. Her voice was steady, deliberate, carrying an effortless composure. "It's easy to talk, but harder to make a real difference. I focus on what I can do, not on what others expect me to say." A murmur ran through the audience. It wasn't just the words, it was the way she said them. There was no hesitation, no defensiveness, just a calm certainty. For the first time that evening, Alex hesitated. It was only for a fraction of a second, but it was there, a flicker of uncertainty in his normally impenetrable demeanor. He had expected her to deflect, to dodge, maybe even stumble. Instead, she had flipped the narrative before he could even press. He leaned forward slightly, adjusting his grip on the cue cards in his hand. His expression sharpened. He wasn't about to let the moment slip away. "But," he said, his voice taking on a probing edge, "don't you think some moments demand words, especially when the stakes are so high?" A knowing smirk tugged at his lips as he tapped his pen against the armrest. He was testing the waters now, carefully towing the line between tough questioning and outright provocation. Melania tilted her head slightly, the faintest glint of something unreadable passing through her eyes. "I believe people have their roles," she said, her voice smooth. "My role was to support my husband and our country in my own way." Alex's eyebrow arched. "And supporting him meant staying silent, even when his actions or words created division?" Alex's eyebrow arched. "And supporting him meant staying silent, even when his actions or words created division?" Melania remained still. Her expression didn't shift. Her body language didn't betray even a hint of discomfort. Instead, she let the silence stretch, let it weigh on the room. The anticipation was almost unbearable. Even Alex, who had mastered the art of controlling a live audience, could sense the shift in energy. He expected her to react, to push back, to get defensive. Instead, she exhaled softly, then met his gaze with quiet resolve. "Division has always existed," she said finally, her tone even. "Blaming one person for it is easy, but it doesn't solve the problem. I choose to focus on unity, not blame." Another murmur. This one was different. Not just surprise, but something deeper. Alex studied her for a moment, tapping his pen again, slower this time. He wasn't thrown off, but he was recalibrating. This wasn't the evasive or wounded reaction he had anticipated. "Fair point," he conceded with a small nod. "But speaking of unity, there are rumors, controversies, things people want to hear from you directly. For example, your marriage." The gasp from the audience was immediate, sharp, collective, and suddenly, the air in the room felt heavier. The question had veered from political to deeply personal in an instant. Even for a show known for its hard-hitting moments, this felt like a line being crossed. Alex knew it. And yet, he held his ground, his gaze locked onto Melania's. This was the moment the audience had been waiting for. the raw, unfiltered confrontation. But Melania didn't waver. She remained perfectly still, perfectly composed. She had known this moment was coming, and she was ready. Alex leaned forward, his expression tightening as he sensed the gravity of the moment. Melania's expression remained steady, but something in her eyes shifted, a flicker of awareness, a glint of steel. She had been prepared for this. But what happened next turned the conversation into something no one could have predicted. Alex's voice dropped slightly, making the moment feel both intimate and charged with tension. "Let's address the elephant in the room, Melania. Many have questioned your choices, your silence during some of the most tumultuous times in recent history, and even your relationship with the former president. Are you here to set the record straight?" The audience collectively leaned in, murmuring among themselves. This was the confrontation they had been waiting for, the moment the night had been building toward. Alex's smirk grew as he sensed the tension cresting, believing he was about to corner his guest into a revelatory moment. But Melania didn't take the bait. Instead, she straightened her posture, her presence commanding yet unruffled. "I am here to speak for myself," she said firmly, her accent carrying a new sharpness. "Not for rumors. Not for stories made by people who do not know me." Alex opened his mouth to interject, but Melania wasn't finished. Her voice, once soft and composed, now gained an edge, cutting through the air like a blade. "Everyone has opinions," she continued, her words crisp and deliberate. "But opinions are not facts. I know who I am, and I know what I stand for. The rest is just noise." The audience stilled. The energy in the room shifted, thick with the weight of her words. Even Alex, a seasoned host known for his sharp comebacks, found himself momentarily without one. His smirk faltered, replaced by something resembling genuine surprise. Melania let the moment breathe before continuing. Her gaze swept over the audience, her presence filling the space in a way that demanded attention. "It is easy to judge someone from the outside," she said, her voice unwavering. "Harder to look inside yourself and ask why you feel the need to judge." For a heartbeat, the room was utterly silent. And then, as if breaking a spell, applause erupted. It started as a murmur, then built into a crescendo. Some members of the audience even rose to their feet, clapping enthusiastically. Alex, still processing, cleared his throat and shifted in his seat. He wasn't used to being the one caught off guard. He scrambled to regain control, his usual charm faltering for the first time that evening. "Well," he stammered, forcing a smile, "that's, quite a perspective. But surely you understand why people feel—" Melania cut him off, her lips curving into a small, polite smile. "I understand more than you think," she said simply. The applause grew even louder. But Alex wasn't done yet, and his next move would raise the stakes even higher.